Hey guys, what is up? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host. Joining me today is a very special guest, Mr. Jordan Pun, who is aka Texans Thoughts. He's the host of the Houston FB pod, Houston Unfiltered pod. Also does some writing and scouting for the NFL Draft Bible and the Scouting Academy. Jordan, thanks for taking the time to join me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steven. Thank you. I'm on Christmas break, so I'm chilling, just get to do a bunch of football content. And so I'm really appreciative of you reaching out and thankful to get this opportunity to talk ball with you, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also on Christmas break. It was great to get away from the kids and kind of recharge the batteries this week. So I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, a lot going on in the NFL world lately. Unfortunately, with the COVID stuff like that. Can you update our listeners on what the Texans are going through with their COVID situation, and then we'll kind of jump into this matchup more specifically after that.
Yeah, so they've been hit by the injury bug, the COVID bug. I know just today I saw a bunch of their backups are out. Their starters are pretty good. So thankfully we haven't been hit as hard as some other teams. I know you guys have like Bosa is out, some other guys. So
Yeah.
we luckily haven't really had our stars been hit by it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's the Texans. We don't really have many stars. So I mean, luckily we're pretty in good luck about COVID. We have a few guys on the list, but not too many like big impact guys. It's mainly backups. So
Yeah, hopefully both teams can kind of get more healthy.
mhm.
I know the NFL has been a little more willing to move games. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen. We're hoping everything happens on schedule. You mentioned kind of the transition that your guys' roster is going through, and I kind of wanted to get your general thoughts on Nick Caserio and David Culley and kind of how the operation has been in their first year together.
Yeah, I think Nick Caserio, starting with him. I mean, I would overall give him like a passing grade. I think he's done like definitely a better job than Bill O'Brien was as our previous GM. I mean, that's a very low bar, so he's done better than that. I think overall he's had some wins, he's had some losses. I mean, I think he's done pretty good with the hand that he was dealt, walking into arguably the worst situation that a GM could really walk into in terms of low draft capital, not a lot of cap space, just not a lot of
Right.
talent on the roster. So he's done okay with his draft. I mean, without having a first or second round pick, I love Nico Collins. I like Brevin Jordan. He's found a starter on the defensive line in Roy Lopez. So I think that was pretty solid. In terms of free agency, I liked his approach overall. He looked for kind of these low risk 1 year deals in terms of veterans. And some of them have hit, like Malik Collins, like Ken Magruder-Hill, and then some of them have missed a little bit, but they still kind of looked like good signings, like guys like Philip Lindsay, guys like Desmond King, like these guys who had great seasons with other teams and potentially could have done something with us. And it didn't work out, but I do like that approach from him, kind of looking towards low risk signings and kind of just trying to keep that cap space for the future. So overall, I like what Nick Caserio has done. I'm not ready to say he's going to be the best GM in the league. I mean, it's only been one
Right.
season, and I think his biggest tests are ahead of him with the Deshaun Watson trade and with this next draft class. So once we get that, we'll kind of get a better idea of who he really is. But overall, good return so far from Nick Caserio. And then I guess David Culley, that's a tougher one. That's a tougher one to be optimistic about because I was never really a big fan of David Culley of the hire. I mean, there was just his resume, looking at his resume, what he's done in the NFL, it just couldn't compare to, Brandon Staley,
Right.
Robert Saleh, Eric Bieniemy, Brian Dabble, all those guys that were potential hires. It just couldn't compare at all. And so I wasn't a big fan of it when he did get hired. But I mean, I wanted to give the guy a chance. It's my favorite football team at the end of the day. I'm not going to call this guy a bust before he's even coached a single game, right? But now we are almost through the end of the season. And he's struggled in terms of, a lot of in-game decision stuff, fourth down decisions, timeouts, challenges, stuff like that. So he hasn't really shown the prowess there. And those are somewhat rookie mistakes. I kind of get it. You can grow with
Sure.
that. But the returns so far haven't been great. I mean, the optimism behind him is that, he's got all this experience. He can be this teacher. He can be this culture setter. But we're seeing that when you're winning 3 games, the culture of the locker room, it's not going to be that good, no matter how
Yeah.
no matter how experienced you are. So, and now there's rumors that he might be on the hot seat and might be replaced after just 1 year. So it's tough. I hope they do go in a different direction. He's a very likable guy, but I just don't think he's going to be the guy to turn this team around and lead us to the playoffs or even the Super Bowl one day.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough situation, looking at potentially moving on from, your rookie head coach. Obviously not as bad as division rival Jacksonville at this kind of point. But we'll kind of move on. Obviously, you guys played them this past week, but I want to talk about the rookie quarterback, Davis Mills. Obviously, everybody, is familiar with Tyrod Taylor that listens to our show. And unfortunately, the pattern that has emerged with Tyrod Taylor has followed him to the Texans. But I want to focus this on Davis Mills because he was obviously a rookie, a draft prospect that not a lot of people knew a ton about. He'd only had the one season at Stanford, and he was kind of considered, the dart throw. Of course, Tyrod Taylor kind of pegged as the veteran to wade the franchise through this waiting period with Deshaun Watson. Then he gets hurt after the first game. So what have you seen from Davis Mills across this season? It seems to me, like, at least from the outside looking in, that he's kind of hitting his stride lately. So what's kind of your assessment of Mills' rookie season so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's a rookie season that ideally should have never really even had to happen. Like you said, it really shouldn't have. I mean, 11 collegiate starts at Stanford, a third-round pick. Like, that's not a guy you want to just be throwing into the fire halfway through week 2. But circumstances are circumstances. It's the NFL. Everyone's got to be prepared. My take on rookie Davis Mills' season so far is that he is a very dangerous quarterback. And what I mean by that can be your clickbaity title. He's the most dangerous quarterback in the NFL because he is just good enough to the point where he's going to give you flashes. If you look at the box score stats, there's stuff there. There's reasons to be optimistic. And especially when you compare it to the other first round rookie quarterbacks who are also in bad situations and who have also struggled at times, right? So the stats look pretty decent. I mean, he's throwing for 65% completion percentage. He has at least a positive touchdown to interception ratio of 10-9, just under 2,000 yards in 8 starts. So there's reasons to be optimistic about that. He's had some big games, had some like 300 plus games, multi-touchdown games. There's been some flashes for sure. But the reason why I say he's the most dangerous type of quarterback in the NFL is because to me, his ceiling is always kind of going to be this bottom third of the league NFL, maybe really high level backup. That's always what I've thought about him, and watching the film of him now, nothing really has changed my assessment on that. I think he's had his moments, but at the end of the day, he's a guy who is going to win best within the pocket because he's not super mobile, not going to really create out a structure. And when you look at the qualities of a pocket passing quarterback, they've got to be really good with their reads, got to be super accurate, got to be able to at least manipulate the pocket a little bit. And Mills has struggled with all those things. And I think he's improved a little bit over the season, but those good stats that I mentioned earlier are also a little bit deceiving. I'm not a big stats guy. I think stats can be cherry picked a little bit, manipulated a little bit to kind of prove whichever side of the argument that you're on. And I mean, with Davis Mills in particular, he's still only really throwing for 194 yards per game, just 6.4 yards per attempt. And a lot of his bigger outputs have been kind of inflated from fourth quarter blowouts, versus the Colts, versus the Rams, versus the Seahawks. Those were 3 of his 4 biggest outputs in terms of passing yards. So that's just some stuff to keep in mind. And so I think he's the type of quarterback that, he's an easy guy to root for. And you want him to succeed, obviously, but he's always going to be that guy who you're just going to make a lot of excuses for. And you're always going to be like, oh, what if he had that better play caller? What if he had a better offensive line? What if he had that better wide receiver? And when you've got a quarterback like that who needs to have all of like his surrounding, his situation to be, top 10 in the league, for him to be a good quarterback, it just gives your general manager a less margin for error to build that, perfect team. Like, is it possible? Sure. But it's very hard in the NFL to consistently get all these decisions right. And so when you have a quarterback who needs to be elevated by his team rather than he's the one elevating his team, it just makes it tough for me to believe that he's a franchise guy. So that's my thoughts on him.
No, that's really sound logic. Of course, outside looking in perspective from us. So obviously, we come to you. So do you think that he, in like his best case scenario, could be kind of like a Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G type? Or do you think even that is a little bit, too high of a ceiling for him?
Yeah, it's really tough to tell because we don't have a big sample size right now,
Mhm.
especially going back to college and then now. But I think that would be the ultimate. If everything is great around him, if you give him like a Dalvin Cook, you give him great defense, you give him a good wide receivers and everything like that. Yeah, he could probably have a couple seasons like a Kirk Cousins where he's gonna put up 4,000 yards and make a playoff run. I think that would be the ultimate season for him. Ceiling for him. I kind of see him more of like a Andy Dalton, Case Keenum.
Okay.
That's kind of more like the median for him, um, in my opinion.
So is he someone that you think this team could kind of wait on the quarterback class another year, kind of give Davis another shot? We've seen a couple teams, kind of do that similar path. Obviously, I haven't watched a ton of draft prospect film yet, but everything I hear is that this quarterback class isn't that great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Deshaun Watson trade, of course, but if Davis Mills is the starting quarterback next year, would that all surprise you?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think he's shown enough where no one's calling him a bust. No one, if anyone's calling him a bust, I mean they just don't really know what they're looking at, obviously, because he's done enough.
Yeah.
He's definitely done good for the situation that he's been dealt. Probably like a bottom 5 roster, bad play calling, etc. Right. So I would not be surprised whatsoever if he's the quarterback for 2022. I think he's earned kind of that shot because with quarterbacks, I mean, development is so tough and it's not always linear and you got to be patient. And so even though I wasn't a big fan of Mills going into like the pre-draft process,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean I'm going to write him off even after just a year. He's definitely shown enough. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. And especially with what you said, the draft class, it's not super quarterback friendly. It's definitely more in terms of defensive prospects at the top. And the Texans are going to be picking top 3. So there's just
Yeah.
no reason to be reaching on a quarterback that high and, kind of wasting one of those years of their rookie quarterback contract. So yeah, I think Mills is going to be the guy for 2022.
There we go. So, obviously, something for Chargers fans to keep an eye on as we approach draft talk. I want to pivot here and talk about the offensive line. Of course,
Mhm.
our listeners know I'm the big offensive line guy on our show, and I think the Texans have an interesting approach right now. I guess obviously, Larry Tunsil being hurt does not help. Tunsil when healthy is one of the better offensive tackles in the league. But I'm reading that Titus Howard switched from right tackle to left tackle, played really well. Now he's switching back to guard because of other injuries. What's going on with the Texans offensive line lately?
So I don't know if they lead the league in different configurations, but they have to be up there. The last number I saw was they played 12 different configurations on the line, which is not a recipe for success.
No.
Because it's one thing to have the talent or not on the offensive line, but such a big part of it is just the continuity, the chemistry, the teamwork that goes
Yeah.
involved with it. Because like your offensive line guy, I mean, it's 5 guys, but they're all working as one,
Right.
and so if you don't have that cohesiveness, it's not going to work. So they're struggling in every aspect of it. The numbers are bad. They're last in adjusted line yards. They're bad run blocking. They're not great at pass protecting. Like they don't really have a lot of strengths on the offensive line. I think there's a talent issue, and I also think there's a coaching issue. And then there's a mismanaging of positions issue. Like you said, Titus Howard, I mean, he was a tackle coming out of college, and they have done everything they can to stunt his development. They moved him left guard, right tackle, left tackle, now back to left guard. And it's really, really frustrating because it's so easy for everyone to see that he's a better tackle than he's a guard. And yet they're still trying to make him something that he's not. And it's directly hurting the success of this team. And he's one of our only bright young players in our former first round pick. So it's frustrating to see for sure. And I think the offensive line is probably the biggest weakness of this Texans team and the biggest area for the Chargers to pinpoint and attack and take advantage of.
Well, that's going to be easier said than done this week with Joey Bosa on the COVID list and not playing. But, definitely something to keep an eye on there. I want to shift gears again and kind of talk about the skill talent around Davis Mills.
Okay.
Brandin Cooks, for whatever reason, cannot be stopped. This man is just like continuing to produce at an all-time level. Team after team, it doesn't really matter. So how are the Texans kind of manufacturing touches for him? Because I saw a clip of him scoring on a screen pass last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just kind of amazed that this traditional deep threat on other teams has now become this bona fide number one receiver on the Texans. But walk us through how they are kind of manufacturing touches for him.
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, he's always been known as this great deep threat, great vertical threat, and he's going on. How old is he now? He's 28 now. So his speed has been zapped a little bit. He's not just going to be running past cornerbacks and safeties, especially if there's a safety over top. But like you said, he's kind of had to alter his game now, and he's doing a lot more underneath stuff. And so part of that is because of the scheme, wanting to get the ball out quickly because our pass protection sucks, and the other part is because Davis Mills isn't a good deep ball thrower. And so he's got to work the quick game, the intermediate game. And so you're seeing versus man coverage heavy teams will scheme up a lot of rub routes to get Brandin Cooks free. And he's usually always the first read on plays like that. He's Mills' go-to guy for sure. And then versus zone coverage teams, he'll just do a lot of underneath stuff, a lot of curls, a lot of slants underneath, just trying to find the soft spots in the zone. They'll get him involved in the screen game a good amount, but we're horrible at blocking screens. So it's really painful every time to watch them execute a screen. I mean, that one last week was the most successful screenplay of all season. It really was. It's more of an anomaly than a consistency. But yeah, they've kind of transitioned Cooks to, instead of that deep vertical threat, just more underneath stuff, just feeding him more in terms of volume than in terms of big plays.
Well, that's a good transition for him. I hope things get better for him and the rest of the group there. You mentioned Nico Collins earlier. We were big Brevin Jordan fans on this show. Obviously, those are kind of the two, headliners in terms of the rookie class. How are those two developing throughout this season?
Yeah, Nico Collins, I was such a big fan of him. I thought he was a steal in the third round. I thought, if he played that 2020 season, he probably would have been a second rounder, maybe even have some first round hype. I mean, he's this crazy height, weight, speed type of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I kind of messed myself up and gave him too high of expectations because at the end of the day, he's playing with bad quarterback play and he's just a third round rookie. And so I think he excels a little bit more versus zone teams where he can find the soft spots and he's not challenged so much at the line of scrimmage. But he struggled a bit with man coverage and really separating smoothly like that. He's not as refined of a route runner as I was hoping for. But overall, I think the arrow is still pointing up for him. I'm still very optimistic on him and in his future. I think he just needs to work on refining his routes a little bit better, and he can be, a really high level wide receiver 2, maybe even have some seasons as a wide receiver 1. If he can really build chemistry with the quarterback. I think one thing that they're really missing is his ability on like fade balls down the sideline. And it's frustrating because he really excelled at that in college, and Davis Mills really excelled at that in college, but the play calling just hasn't really tried to tailor it to their strengths. They'll try it in the red zone, but they're not really trying it anywhere else. And so I think that's an area that they can look to get him more involved. But and then Brevin Jordan, they didn't start him until just a few weeks ago. They were really trying to bring him along slowly. They had some other guys that they prioritized over him because with our tight ends, they really want them to be able to block because we try and always establish a run. We don't have any success doing it, but that's our identity. And so Brevin Jordan, like you said, you're a big fan of him. You probably saw in college, like he puts in the effort as a blocker, but that's not really his niche, right? He's a receiving guy. And so now that he has been getting some more time recently, I think he has 3 touchdowns. How many is it? He has, 3 touchdowns, and he just has 15 receptions in total. So, I mean, he's more of like their red zone guy right now. He's able to find the soft spots in, up the seam and areas like that. So that would be where you'd want to keep an eye on him for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to hear about those rookies, man. I'm a big draft guy. I know you are too.
Yes.
Love talking about those rookies. We spent a lot of time talking about the Texans offense today. Of course, have to mention the defense. Our listeners are very familiar with Desmond King, but I always get like the comment like, I don't know anyone on the Texans. So who are kind of the defensive players on the Texans that have been kind of the key contributors this year, and how are they doing?
Yeah, so I think the best player on our defense has been Camu Grugier-Hill, linebacker. Unfortunately, he got injured with a knee injury, so he's going to miss this game. So you guys dodged a bit of a bullet there. But I think other than him, it would be Malik Collins. He's coming off a historically awful season with the Raiders, but so was everyone on that defense. And now he's come here, and it's been a better scheme fit for him. He's actually been a solid run defender, which he never was before in his career. And then he's still wrecking havoc versus the pass. So I really like him. In terms of some not household names that I wouldn't expect any non-Texans fans to know. Their nickel cornerback now, Desmond King, got moved to the outside, and it's been for youngster Tavier
Oh
Thomas.
wow.
Yeah, so I can go on a whole other rant about Desmond King being forced to play the outside, man. They're ruining him by doing that, but it is what it is. But Tavier Thomas has been good. He's been a good run defender, very rarely targeted in pass coverage. So that'll be an interesting matchup for sure for the Chargers. And then the last guy, I'll give you another rookie. I never even watched him coming out, but Garrett Wallow. He was a linebacker for
Okay.
TCU.
Yeah.
And he's just recently been getting the start with Camu Gridger-Hill out, and this man has been everywhere. He's a very athletic guy. He's one of those kind of undersized linebackers, but he has the speed to really fly around the field, and he's a hard hitter too. So I mean, this guy's 6'2", 230, but then in his last game, in his first official start last week versus the Jaguars, he had 11 tackles. So I think the arrow's pointing up for him, and he's definitely a guy to watch. Just having the speed in run defense and in coverage. So those are kind of the main guys I would keep an eye on.
There we go. I can't believe Desmond King's playing outside corner, man.
Oh my goodness. This team just doesn't know how to utilize players to their skill sets. It's really, really frustrating, man.
Isn't Lovie Smith is the defensive coordinator there, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you do a lot of Tampa then.
Yeah, in the beginning of the season, it was definitely a lot of Tampa 2. They've gone away from it a little bit. They're still very zone heavy, and they're still primary coverages, Tampa 2, but they'll switch it up a little bit more now. Oh, I actually forgot one more name. Jonathan Grenard, sophomore. For us, he's been leading us in sacks. He's definitely a guy to look out for as well.
There we go. Just I know our listeners are gonna have a crazy reaction to finding out Desmond King playing on the outside. But Jordan, this has been great, man. I want to get just kind of your general thoughts on what you expect. Obviously, we don't really know who is going to be playing or not in this game. But what's kind of your thought process right now, as of Tuesday, as looking at this matchup?
Yeah, I would love to say that the Texans are going to get the dub, but I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I do think we're going to take the L here. The Chargers are just a better team, better, more talent, both sides of the ball, better coached. And I think this is going to be one of Justin Herbert's best games of the season for sure. Our defense is very easy to be picked on. And as long as he's good in terms of keeping the ball safe, like that's the only way our defense is good is when we force turnovers. That's the only thing that's keeping us afloat. And so as long as he's pretty good in that, I think he'll have a great day, probably 300 plus yards, 3+ touchdowns, something like that. So I do think we're going to take the L. I think in terms of Texans fans listening to this, looking for any sense of optimism, we would hope that this could be a matchup for us to run the ball. I know not historically, but this year the Chargers run defense has not been too hot. And that's been our identity, is try and run the ball. So if we can establish that and then take some deep play action shots off of that, that would be our formula for success. Do I have faith in that actually working? No, but that would be the formula to look out for this week.
Yeah, of course, the Chargers defense is going to take a big hit without Joey Bosa, but the run defense has generally been better since the bye week. They had a couple injuries up front, particularly Justin Jones, that really kind of took it really took the defense for a wild ride. Unfortunately, we had some undrafted free agent players that just were not ready for that moment, kind of playing in there. But it's been better since the bye week, and but still, if the Texans just kind of pound the rock, then they certainly could see some success, particularly in the fourth quarter once you kind of mention the garbage time aspect of things. But no, it should be fun, man. Are you going to be at this game, or are you kind of away from Houston right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Toronto.
Oh wow, okay.
So I'm back there home for the break. So I won't be going to the. I've never actually even been to a Texans game in my life.
No way, no kidding.
Enough, yeah.
Dang. Well, hopefully we can. Hopefully those rumors of an NFL team to Toronto are true.
Hopefully, man.
Are you a Raptors fan then, by chance?
I'm a Raptors fan. Yes.
Okay, so this is exclusively for Alex. Our co-host is a big Sixers fan. So if you could just please give your thoughts on Kawhi Leonard right now, that'd be fantastic.
Me or Alex? Sorry.
You.
Oh, me. Kawhi. Oh my God. I mean, I love him for bringing a ring, but at the same time, it kind of sucks that he left for the Clippers. So it's kind of like a love-hate relationship. You know what I mean? He brought us a ring. He did what he could. Like he didn't want to be traded here at the end of the day, but he battled through it, brought us a ring, did his job. So I still have good feelings towards him.
Yeah, and ran rampant on the Philadelphia 76ers. So just teasing, Alex. Well, Jordan, this has been a great, man. Where can our listeners find your stuff if they want some Texans intel? And you mentioned, or like I mentioned, the draft intel as well coming up in the next few months.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, just follow me on Twitter at Texans_thoughts. That's where I'm going to tweet out all my content. I write for NFL Draft Bible at Sports Illustrated. So that's where all my draft stuff is going to be. And yeah, I would love to reconnect with you, Steven, talk more draft stuff as we get closer to that. Actually, I do have one quick question for you, if you don't mind. But
yeah,
I was wondering to get your thoughts on Brandon Staley, because I thought he was like the top dog in terms of a head coach candidate, and I'm jealous you guys have him.
Yeah, we were big fans of him as well on this show. Brian Dable was kind of our number one candidate collectively for the three of us, just because of, you know, the offensive continuity aspect of things. But we're thrilled, man. Brandon Staley has been everything and more that we would have hoped. You know, we're going to be a little anxious to see the defensive adjustments that he makes in year two, because the defense just kind of doesn't really have the personnel, I think, to execute his kind of scheme. So we're excited to see what he brings on that end, but you know, we love his mentality. He's been fantastic as a communicator, and you know, we love listening to his press conferences and things like that. So Chargers fans love him. We're very thrilled with his hiring. A little bit critical of the fourth down decisions, some of us again from Thursday night, but for the most part, Brandon Staley has been a breath of fresh air for Chargers fans.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I wish I could say the same.
Well, I guess you guys might be looking for another head coach next year. So
exactly. We'll find the next Staley, hopefully.
There we go. Well, Jordan, this has been great, man. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us, and happy holidays.
Thank you, man. Thank you once again. Happy holidays as well to you. Hopefully we can reconnect soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.